Welcome back, Canadian Baseball Network fans, the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. We have a very special guest today. We're going to be joined by left-handed pitcher Erik Sabrowski, Canada's newest big leaguer, Jackson.
Yeah, it's always a thrill to have a big leaguer on. A guy who has just pitched in some big games in October. So really excited to chat with him about just his journey. He's had a really interesting story, hasn't he, Matt?
Yeah, it seems like anytime we talk about Canadians in the big leagues, we're talking about the Guardians. So we're obviously going to dive into their player development and pitching in those playoffs at Yankee Stadium. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that. And he's had a real interesting journey coming up. So we're looking forward to diving into all of that with him. We're thrilled to be joined by Canada's latest big leaguer, Erik Sabrowski. Erik, how's it going?
It's going good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you've had like we were talking before we jumped on here, you've had quite the year, or even 6 months, I guess. So before we get too much into the weeds about it, can you kind of take us back to when you got called up in early September and what that process actually looked like for you?
For me, it was pretty simple. We were in Gwinnett, Georgia, when I was playing for AAA Columbus, and me and my fiance at the time, now wife, Renee, and her dad were just back at the hotel hanging out, playing some cards, and my phone rang, and it was Andy Tracy, our manager. And when I saw his name pop up on the caller ID, I knew what was happening.
Did you have you knew it was happening? Did you have a sense that it could be coming with it being September and kind of where the big league team was at?
Sort of. Funny enough, actually, during the game we played that night, there's a few situations where I thought maybe it was going to be my turn to pitch. I hadn't thrown in, 6, 7 days. And when I didn't go up or didn't get called to go in the game, I kept thinking, what's going on? What the hell's going on? And so I thought, oh, maybe I am getting called up. So then after the game, I was, kind of almost waiting for the manager to come over, tap me on the shoulder, this or that. And it never happened. And driving home to the hotel on the bus, I was kind of like, you idiot, what are you doing? Getting out ahead of yourself. Like, let this thing happen. Don't try and make it happen yourself. And then 2 hours later, got the call.
So you see his name pop up. Okay, what was the initial reaction before you even picked up the phone? What were you thinking?
Um, well, Renee jumped so high, she almost put a dent in the roof. Uh, Both quick hug, and then I answered the phone. I was in a bit of shock, really, just because you're in AAA, you're so close, you feel like you're close. They always tell you you're just a call away, but they don't tell you how you're going to feel when the call actually happens.
Yeah. So how did it feel? You answer the phone. He says,
It's
"You're
just, hey
available."
man, pack your stuff. You're going up to Cleveland tomorrow. Um, Congratulations, you've worked hard for this. Make sure you call your family, and car's going to be there in 3.5 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get to the big leagues, make your debut. Did you have kind of a welcome to the big leagues moment?
Um, yeah, probably just sitting in my locker a day or two into it, and Jose Ramirez is just staring at me. Just kind of probably wondering who's this guy? What's he doing? Um, that was probably like the off the field moment, and then on the field moment was just my first game, like
Yep.
running in at Kauffman Stadium, a place I've watched a few games. I went to school nearby, so I was familiar with the stadium and just kind of running in and being like, this is what it's like on the field.
Yeah. What does it feel like for people that will never experience that, which is a lot of people, very few people get to experience that. What is that feeling like running in from the big league bullpen?
Oh, the first time it felt like I was weightless. Um, just kind of like doing my best to stay focused and on the task at hand and stuff, but it's a thrill. It is, especially in come playoff time, which I was fortunate enough to do. Stadiums are packed, people are losing their minds, and I'm running in to hopefully put out a fire, and it is an incredible feeling. You kind of feel invincible, and hopefully when you do your job well, the walk off the mound after the inning is even better.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's funny you say the playoff atmosphere before kind of even getting to the playoffs, because obviously Cleveland had a really good year this year.
Mhm.
And not only that, but one of the best bullpens ever. I mean, the success of that Cleveland bullpen getting thrown not only into the big leagues, but into a bullpen like that with guys like Emmanuel Clase, fellow Canadian Cade Smith. Did you feel any added pressure kind of jumping into that situation?
Um, in a weird way, it was almost like a confidence boost. It was
Okay.
like someone somewhere, Cleveland's front office felt like I was a piece of that, felt like I was, worthy to be a contributor to that bullpen. And it probably made things easier, really, just knowing that seeing what these guys had done all season, if they can do it, I can definitely do it too. And yeah, it was a big shot in the arm of confidence of I'm here, I'm able to perform here, and it was a blast.
Was there anybody in that bullpen that kind of took you under their wing over the first few days and kind of showed you the ropes?
Yeah, yeah. Eli Morgan and Cade,
Okay.
definitely, of course. So Cade was once I got there, I took over like bullpen bag duties from Cade, kind of youngest guy in the bullpen. Funny
So he was
that
probably happy that that you were
yeah,
there.
yeah, funny that he was doing it just with the year he had for sure. But those two guys definitely helped, show me where to be, kind of how the processes were there. And if I ever felt out of place, I just tried to figure out what Cade was doing and replicated that.
Did you ever, that's a good point. Did you ever feel out of place? I mean, obviously they believe in you, they call you up, you're a big leaguer, but did you ever have that feeling as like a personal feeling?
Uh, for the first, I think it was 9 or 10 days where I didn't throw.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
because you didn't make your debut for was it that 9 days?
it was something like that. It was a while. Kind of by the end of it, it was a little bit of, oh, it went from being the world's coolest vacation to kind of a little more nerves of like, man, I got to get in a game soon here. Like, I hope I'm able to get in before I get sent down, that kind of thing. And that's kind of when those thoughts kind of creeped in. But I feel like it did a pretty good job of just to use the same line again, staying focused at the task at hand and just trying to focus on doing my job whenever my name did get called.
100%. So how well did you know Cade Smith before getting to the big leagues?
I didn't know him before I joined Cleveland's system, but
Yeah.
once I joined there, he did the same thing for me last year in Akron. I showed up in June, and he was, kind of the big guy in the pen, and it was the same thing. He was only there for a week before he went to Columbus, but it was the same idea of if I feel out of place, what's Cade doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Jackson and I were just talking before you got on. Whenever we seem to talk about Canadians in the big leagues, the Guardians are always coming up, obviously with the North
Yeah.
and you and Cade, but they draft really well. But you and Kate both had unique paths. You mentioned growing up close to Kaufman State or playing college baseball close to Kaufman Stadium at Cloud County Community College. They recruit a ton of Canadians, not only to that school but that conference. How did junior college specifically get you ready for the big leagues?
It's where I learned to fail.
Yeah,
Um, my first year of college, I went to Cisco Community College in Texas and probably underperformed in every expectation they had of me. They, signed me to be a power hitting first baseman and to hopefully be in their lineup as a freshman. And I think I started, two or three for 20 and probably got three more at bats for the rest of the year. And didn't pitch a whole lot either. And it was a big eye opener during my exit meeting with them of like, hey, we're going to bring you in. Hopefully you can compete for this first base job. And if you don't win it, we're going to transfer you out to a D3 that semester. And I was like, well, I think I could pitch for you guys. And they said, no, you can't. And, I don't blame them. That coach has a job to do and wins and losses are, how he gets judged. And so he had a feeling. I had a different opinion, but it's where I learned to fail. I didn't hit well. But it's where I really got, in tune with long toss and the weight room and things like that. And since I wasn't playing, I was able to go heavy at those other things and not really worry about being fresh for games.
yeah.
And so that was my freshman year. And then my sophomore year was the complete opposite. It was like, you're going to get the ball opening day. You're going to be our horse. We're going to ride you. And that was also quite the experience too of learning, how to pitch when I'm not feeling great, trying to get into the seventh, eighth inning when I'm already at 110 pitches, which probably isn't the way things go now. but at the time it's what it was, and how to really just dig down or dig deep and manage to get outs when you're not, maybe at 100%.
How do you draw on that when now you're on the biggest stage, if that makes sense? Like, what do you use? Is there a certain, mentally, how do you prepare yourself when for games and now that you're pitching on the biggest stage?
Well, one thing that they probably again don't tell you about Kansas is fields are tiny and the wind always blows out. And so 1 through 9, you are at risk of giving up a home run, any day of the week. And I think pitching to the point of, sometimes they're going to get lucky. They're going to hit one. Don't change what you do because in the end they got lucky, that kind of thing. And just learning how to deal with, negative outcomes on the mound. And I think that's where it first started for me. I struggled with that in the minors a lot. I'd give up a hit, hard hit ball, even if it was caught, and then be like, oh, I got to tinker. I got to find the corner. I got to try and make pitches better than they really need to be. And that's kind of where some control problems started for me in college or in double A and triple A specifically. But it was learning how to overcome that and realize that, they got 2 hits. They're probably not going to get a third one, so on and so forth.
How did you come to that mindset? Because I feel like a lot of people would come to that conclusion far too late in their career. Obviously, you've been able to do it at a really young age. How did you kind of come to that?
It's probably something that's been told to me a ton, through high school and college. And then it was my last outing in AAA this year. A switch kind of flipped. I was pitching against Indianapolis and Columbus, and the first 2 batters came up and got 2 hits. And I found myself just getting the ball back and thinking, well, they got 2. They're not going to get 3. Funny enough, they ended up, I think, scoring 3 runs on me in 2 innings. But I still look back on that outing fondly because, yeah, I gave up a couple hits, but I kept pounding the strike zone. I kept doing what I was good at, which is getting ahead of hitters and putting them away. And those hitters get paid to get hits, just like I get paid to get them out. So sometimes they're going to get hits, and it's not as much about trying to limit the damage hitter by hitter, but is how you react to what happens. Because you can't control the event or the outcome. You can only control your response.
Winter and snow in Canada usually means no baseball for a while. But thankfully, the Baseball Zone has you covered during the holiday season because their 2024 Snowball Baseball Camp is here. For those aged 5 to 13, it's a great way to spend some time out of the house, having fun, and learning something. The Snowball Camp includes thorough baseball instruction in all areas, great camaraderie and competition, home run derbies and other games, a TBZ t-shirt, and a bonus daily day pass for extra work and fun after the camp if you haven't already had enough. It runs December 27th through the 30th and January 2nd and 3rd. You can pick and choose which day you'd like to attend. Space is limited, so sign up early for the 2024 Snowball Winter Baseball Camp at thebaseballzone.ca.
So not only you mentioned kind of your struggles early in your junior college career as a hitter, but you've also had 2 Tommy John surgeries. How difficult was that to deal with, both physically but more so mentally in your career?
The first one was fine. Got some bad luck with as soon as I was healthy, COVID hit. But I was able to come home and probably threw about 30 innings to, high school and college players in the area. So going into 21, I felt ready to go and I was excited. And then right at the start of spring training, just something didn't feel right in my elbow. And that kind of pushed me back to where I could only start pitching in affiliated ball in June. And then I had my 2 months there, and that's kind of when things didn't go well again. I think my last outing, the first fastball I threw in the 5th inning was like 83 miles an hour. And as someone who's, at that time was more used to, 88 to 92, that was a big, alarm going off in my head. That's kind of when I knew my elbow was busted again. And then that brought me into the second surgery, which was probably physically easier to go through because I knew what I had to do, but harder mentally because I also knew what I was about to endure.
What's that process like? Because there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this, a lot of young players that are going to eventually go through that. Take us through kind of what Tommy John surgery not is, but kind of the process and the 12 to 18 months post surgery, what that's kind of like.
Well, the first, 2 or 3 months is just trying to regain mobility in your elbow, right? Just I'm not sure why, but part of the surgery you lose a lot of range of motion just as things are healing. So it's not necessarily cranking on it to open it all the way up and be able to touch your shoulder again, but you're doing a lot of massage work in the joint, strengthening around it to try and regain that flexion and extension. And that's probably the hardest point or hardest part because you're used to being a baseball player, you're used to using your arm. And for me, all of a sudden I'm right-handed for 3.5 months. And that was a really weird thing to deal with. But once you get into throwing around, month 4 or 5, depending on what procedure you get, you kind of hit benchmarks every week. You're throwing a higher or a longer distance or more volume. And so once you get into that point, I felt at least it was a much smoother and quicker sailing.
Was there ever a point during that second rehab that you thought maybe this isn't for me? Maybe this is a sign that baseball is just not for me.
Oh, definitely. It was, so I got surgery in October of 21, and come to October of 22, I'm thrown off the mound again, and my elbow just doesn't feel right. Like every day I throw, I feel like I threw 100 pitches the day before. Like it just wasn't recovering very well. And I was like, man, I just put, to combine the two, I put almost 30 months of rehab into this, and it still doesn't feel good. What am I doing? That was kind of when it's like, maybe I need to start my life. This obviously isn't working out well, and it's been put out there. But that's when I called my agent and kind of said, I'm not liking this. I think I'm going to retire. And that's when he said he'd fly out from Toronto and kick my ass. Him and then many other people, my wife, Renee, my mentor, Taylor Burns, they were very good for me in that point where they were like, no, you're too good to quit, to give up. You owe it to yourself for all this work you've done to continue trying at least.
How important was that support from people that knew you so well? You mentioned Taylor Burns of AHP.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that and that support system and how critical that is in getting through something like that.
Well, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have, achieved what I have. I owe all of my success to these people around me who have helped me get through those tough times, who have, celebrated the wins and, been sad in the losses with me, that kind of thing. But yeah, like I was dead set on retiring.
I,
It was,
I I read an article by Mandy Bell, the Guardian's beat
yeah,
writer, that said you were thinking about becoming a teacher.
yeah, yeah. It
So
just felt like something I always wanted to do. And I was like, yeah, it seems a lot, better than trying to fix this busted elbow.
a lot less physically demanding, maybe.
Yeah.
What kind of teacher would you want to be? Would you high
Uh,
school?
I always enjoyed social studies.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it about that social studies? You don't hear that very often from big leaguers. I've never heard a big
Yeah.
leaguer that wants to be a social studies teacher, but what is it about that that's so interesting?
I just liked learning about other cultures and other parts of the world, and that stuff has always interested me. And I figured if I liked it, maybe I'd be good at teaching it.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you stuck with it. I'm sure you're
Yeah.
glad you and everybody around you. So let's jump back to this past fall, pitching in the playoffs. I'm sure you watched baseball growing up and watched the postseason, and now you're at Yankee Stadium pitching in the postseason. What is that feeling like to trot in from the bullpen? I think there was a game that you came in directly after Cade Smith at Yankee Stadium too, I believe.
I think
Uh,
so. Yeah.
it was either Yankee Stadium or in Cleveland. But what's that feeling like that now you're the guy that you used to watch?
It was a dream come true, really. I mean, every outing was, be getting to be the guy that runs it for the bullpen. Um, but Yankee Stadium especially was because, like you said, it's Yankee Stadium. You're playing the New York Yankees, Bronx Bombers. They have what, three MVPs on their team, maybe even more. And just, like you said, I've watched that guy running from the bullpen on TV for my whole life, and now it's me. It was a surreal feeling, but at the same point, it was also like I don't want to get embarrassed out here. I want to, excel at this. So it was back to the task at hand.
How do you go about calming your nerves in a situation like that? Because that's about as pressure packed as it's going to get, aside from the World Series.
It there was definitely a lot going on in my head. I try and do my best to not show anything outward, but definitely internally, that's things are moving a little quick sometimes. And I think just stepping off, taking a deep breath. You know, you're not every pitch you throw isn't going to be the best one you throw, and learning that, if I spike a slider or leave a curveball in the clouds, doesn't mean I have to do it again. Get the ball back, and every pitch is a new opportunity to get a guy out or get ahead in the count or work my way back, and kind of just compartmentalizing each at bat.
Yeah. So I did you strike out Juan Soto in that series at Yankee
Did,
Stadium?
yeah.
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't forget that. So obviously Juan Soto going through his free agency now. How do you get Juan Soto out?
Uh, well, I'm fortunate enough to get him out twice. Uh,
Don't give away too many of your secrets, then. I don't want you, you're going to have to face him again. So, but what's kind of your approach against a guy like that?
he's a really good hitter. A lot of them are really good hitters, but and not to be too cliche, but he hit what, 320, 315. Still getting out over 60% of the time. Sometimes with those guys, you just gotta it pitching's a lot easier when you're ahead in the count. So that's usually your goal, right? You see the OPS numbers drop a lot when hitters are behind, and you see them skyrocket when they're ahead. So in the end, the goal is to throw strike one and then try and find a way to either get it from 1-1 to 1-2 or get it from 0-1 to 0-2. And then you're kind of in the driver's seat.
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about Canadians and the Cleveland Guardians organization. From a pitching perspective, what's their pitching development like, and how has it differed from other places that you've been?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to kind of explore and see what two different organizations are, because I got drafted by San Diego, and I had a great time there. And San Diego was awesome for me as a baseball player and stuff. But it seemed like with Cleveland, every resource from every coach is available to everybody, and they are as invested in the last guy on the depth chart as they are in the first guy. And so they do a really good job of making everyone feel important, and they do a good job of maximizing each guy's talents. I wouldn't say Cleveland has a specific philosophy of how to do one thing or another. Their goal is to make you the best pitcher you can be with what tools you have at your disposal.
Yeah, so and I think that bodes well for them as an organization. We've seen it play out, and you look at payrolls and things like that. They're not among the highest, but they always seem to have that success, right? So that's obviously got to be playing a part in that.
Yeah, definitely. Right. If you can promote from within, probably saves you some money down the road.
Absolutely. So on that note, what does your off season look like now? Did you take any time off, and what does it look like from now until the beginning of spring training?
Yeah, I took a week off. Me and my wife, we drove back from Cleveland, and that was kind of my time off. But once we were back at Edmonton, it was time to go again. Um, for me, the my two biggest focuses are regaining mobility that was lost over 162 games, and building up my base of strength again. Because you work out during the season, but it's a lot different than an off-season workout. During the season, it's a lot more, not getting work or not doing work just to say you did it, but it's a lot more about just maintaining and making sure you feel sharp. Whereas the off-season, it's time to push a little bit, and since you're not throwing games, you have that freedom to push it a little more.
Absolutely. So my last question, being the Canadian Baseball Network, I have to ask you. You may not have thought about it. The next World Baseball Classic, is that something you've given any thought to, and would you be open to, if they give you a call, joining
That
that?
that would be incredible. Um, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but lots of kids across Canada grow up watching Canada play hockey, seeing guys come from the NHL and playing in the World Juniors or World Championships or Olympics, and getting the chance to wear Canada across their chest, and that's something I've always dreamt of. I haven't gotten to do it yet, and I hope I am lucky enough to get the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing some recruitment for Greg Hamilton. We had him on Ansville, Freddie Freeman. So, yeah, Eric, I really appreciate this, man. It was a blast watching you make your debut and obviously pitching the playoffs. We just appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
It's always so exciting, Jackson, to speak with someone so fresh off their big league debut and kind of get that firsthand experience, or I guess secondhand experience directly from the source about what that's like and the emotions involved.
Yeah, it's always such a treat to, get a big leaguer on the show. And yeah, he talked about just like what I got from that, Matt, was like he's got a great perspective on things. And he mentioned learning how to fail. I think that's so important. And it just his mentality and just the way he carries himself, I think it makes a lot of sense as to why he did eventually get to the big leagues. His story's awesome. Him almost quitting and becoming a teacher after the Tommy John surgeries and stuff, all the way back to the bigs, pitching in Yankee Stadium. It's incredible. So, kudos to Erik for his perseverance as well. Like the character clearly matches, the body of work there for sure.
Yeah, from Kansas to Yankee Stadium in the postseason coming in. I believe it was right after Cade Smith striking out Juan Soto. Yeah, it just shows that no journey is linear, no matter where you come from. And a lot can be taken from by young players from a story like Erik's. As you mentioned, he was about to call it quits, and people talked him out of it. He had a strong support system, and you never know how close you are, if you quit. And he didn't do that, and look at him now.
Yeah, and just like how you just never know how things are going to shake out, right? Like he at one point was a first baseman, and now he's, yeah, a great arm and a great bullpen. Like he talked about that too. I love that part when he said like, it makes me like I'm proud to be part of this group. It's such an honor, and I can only imagine, being in a bullpen like that with Clase and Smith and himself also, like just a amazing set of arms. What that must have been like, the things he must have learned throughout that journey too, right?
Yeah, it's so cool to hear that Cade Smith kind of took him under his wing
Yeah.
for a little bit and that Canadian connection. I know you don't want to make more of it than it is, being the Canadian Baseball Network, but it's so cool to see that stuff. And I had to ask me about the World Baseball Classic because that bullpen for Team Canada is shaping up to be quite a good one for Greg Hamilton's team.
Well, no kidding. I mean, there was a time where it was like, oh yeah, Jordan Romano will be the closer, but now there's a million different options. So it's an exciting time. Like there's a clear trend, Matt. Like the big leagues is getting more and more Canadian each year, it feels like.
We really appreciate Erik obviously taking time out of his day to speak with us and share his story. There's going to be more great stories on this podcast over the coming months. Until then, talk soon.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out Canadian Baseball Network for extensive and comprehensive coverage of the latest in Canadian baseball. And the Baseball Zone, Canada's leading instructional baseball academy and training home to thousands of MLB pro, college, and youth baseball players.